Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to go over this week's options watch list. Before I get into the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video in the bio section of social media accounts. Okay, the watch list is kind of pretty much the same as last week. We're watching pretty much most of the same tickers from last week, except for a couple. I'll start with the bearish side. Now, just remember that if the market's weak, I'm going to look at the stocks that are on the bearish list. And if the market's strong, I'm going to look more at the ones on the bullish list. And if there's any significant news or gap ups, the thesis and will change day to day based on anything that happens at the size of the gap ups, because the gap ups definitely do change the levels and the way the stock could react that day. So that's why you need to be in the room and check out the trade ideas section of the plays before they happen. Okay, so I will start with the bearish right off the bat. Now, I know SPY just had a dump and it just fully recovered and then some and almost filled the gap pretty close, couple pennies off, and like, I don't know, 20 cents or so. Actually, more like 50 cents. No, more like 25 cents. But the put to call ratio is still fairly high, so I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing SPY going to all-time highs this week. So not unless something happens. Right now it seems to be rebounding and ignoring everything again, so we'll just have to see what happens. But the first thing on my list is Disney. Now, I know Disney had a big sell-off on earnings, and the earnings was really not that good, and they had subscriber base was down quite a bit. So then it just rebounded, but it kind of starting to pull back. Now, normally I would be like, okay, it's found support in the 169 area, it could bounce, but it's got this big gap right down here. It still needs to fill. It didn't quite fill it right here. It's still got a little ways to fill. And head and shoulders left, head, right shoulder right here. So I think it gets underneath 170. It could probably fill the gap. So I would definitely watch that. And also on the RCT trend line on the weekly, anytime it gets too far away, it likes to act as a magnet, and it could end up pulling down. And ironically, the RCT trend line is right at the 160 level, which is right where the gap fill is. So if it does drop below 170, it's probably going to end up bouncing at 160. So I would definitely watch Disney this week. Then we have JP Morgan. Now, I know it's been going on a tear, but I'm starting to see the bearish divergences going on right here on the hourly. Get a higher high. RSI is making a lower high right there. So it is diverging on the MACD, RSI. The weekly, same thing. It's diverging right here on the RSI histogram. So I would watch for a pullback on JP Morgan under 163. I would say 163 for a push down to the 160. Then you get the strong level right here at 157. If that breaks, you got 156, 155, 154. 53, basically every whole dollar. And JP Morgan, I don't really like to play it that much because it doesn't really move that much, but it could have a pretty decent downside. I'm definitely thinking we could see 158 to even 156, 155. So I would watch JP Morgan. UPS, same thing. UPS has just been going on a tear since earning beat. Now I'm looking at the hourly, head and shoulders, left head, right shoulder. The RCT trend line is so far away on the weekly and the daily. It's just, I'm not saying it's going to go down to 186 or the 160, but I definitely could think it could end up coming back down to 200. We'll have to see if that will happen. I would watch it underneath 215 for a push to 211, 210. Then you get this little gap fill right here in the 206 area to 205. And the 200 would be a pretty significant level. I likely will probably try and bounce right there. So on the daily, obviously 210 to 200 would be the two big areas for it on the daily. I mean, the weekly, I mean, you got this high right here, and you get the histogram right there with this high, with the earning after the earnings high. It's just is a huge bearish divergence on the weekly. So I definitely think UPS is going to end up finding a drop sooner or later. I know that sometimes these divergences can last weeks, like Roku and Baidu. I was calling a pullback like 2 or 3 weeks before it actually happened. Then it finally had a big nasty drop. So I think UPS is due for it to pull back. We'll have to see if that happens now. Cat, I was saying the same thing. It's going to end up pulling back, and it didn't really pull back much, but it's still diverging on the weekly and the daily. And we'll have to see if it actually pulls back. So I would watch it underneath, let's say 240 on the hourly for a push to 236. Then you get this 234 area. You get 232, 230. Then you get this 220, 229, 228, 226. Then you get this 224, which is where it dropped for the earnings, and it just rebounded. So we'll have to see if CAD will end up pulling back too as well. Now on the bullish side, Twitter, after its earning drop, I think that it's gonna end up bouncing. Now you can see right here on the ICT trend line on the weekly, it found support and it bounced. I think that this is a good area to get, because anytime it hits the RCT trend line as support, it ends up bouncing. So went underneath it a little bit right there, then it had a strong move. So hopefully we'll see this kind of a move right here. We'll just have to wait and see if that happens. So I would watch it over, I'd say over 52 for a push to 53, 54, basically every whole dollar, 55, 56. Then you get gap resistance right here at 58. Now that will probably likely get rejected the first time and probably make a cup and handle kind of look, because usually they go up and have a pullback at gap resistance, then try to get a little momentum to break through it. So it usually ends up making like a cup and handle kind of look. So definitely be watching that. Pins is another one. Basically the same thing as Twitter. I'd watch it over let's say 59 for push to 60. Then you get this 62 area right there. Then you got 64, 65. And you get, the 65.50. Then you get this big area right here, 67. Then you're gonna have gap resistance here at 69 to 70-ish area, and likely gonna end up doing the same thing. It's gonna run up. If it does run up to 70, it's probably gonna reject, pull back, and consolidate, and try to make another run for it, and probably end up making a cup and handle kind of look on pins. So yeah, I would definitely watch that. Tesla is another one. Now Tesla, it's come back down and tested this RCT trend line. I think that I was looking at that. Now, another thing to keep an eye on with Tesla is it's got an inverted cup and handle on the daily and the weekly. As you can see, the cup and the handle, and usually that means more downside. We'll have to see if that actually happens. Now, last time Tesla was at below 30 RSI on the daily, it bounced. So I would watch it for a bounce over 595, push 600 to 620, then 630, 628, 640. Then you got this 655, 660 area, 655, 660 area. Then you have 680. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla ends up having a strong week and just push into 700, 750 sometime soon here. So it's pretty oversold and been beaten down. I think that if it does manage to get over 600, it could make a strong run to 700. So I would watch that. Shack is another one, been getting beaten down, kind of looking like the pins in Twitter chart. So I would watch it over 85 or push to 90, 95. Now 95 area is going to be gap resistance. Same thing with Twitter and pins. It's probably run up to it, pull back, make a cup and handle kind of look. In this case, I couldn't make an inverted head and shoulders because you got a left shoulder here, a left shoulder, then you get the head, and if it pulls up to there and pulls back, it could make the other shoulder right here for a strong move up to fill the gap to 100, 105. So definitely have to watch Shaq. BA now. BA I think is just due for a run, as you can see right here on the hourly right here, inverted head and shoulders, left head, right shoulder. It gets over this 229, 230 area. It's probably getting a filling gap up to 233, 235. Then you get the 236, 238, and this 240 level seems to be a pretty big level. It gets rejected this last time it was there. So then you had 240, 245. I just think if it can get out of this little downtrend and get some momentum behind it, once it clears, like I would say 240, and if it can actually get some momentum over 250, 245, it's probably going to run to 250. So I think that BA could make a nice run. Now on the weekly, it's stair stepping. It's like popping up, and it's like consolidating, popping up, dropping back a little bit. And it's making a nice little stair step. So we're at the next stage of the stair stepping on the weekly. So if that is the case, we could end up seeing 250 to 275 if it stays within the weekly pattern it has. So definitely have to watch that. Roku. On the weekly, it didn't go to the RCT trend line. And remember up here, I was calling the top up here, and it finally did dump. But same thing, inverted cup and handle usually means more downside, but it's found support on the RCT trend line on the weekly. So if it does manage to get over we'll say 320. If it gets over 320, probably push to 330. Then you get the 340 area. Then you get 350. Basically, every $10 has been a resistance for Roku. So Roku could end up having a strong move as well. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we end up seeing Roku over 400 again in the next month or two. So Roku could have a strong reversal. Now Netflix is another one. Now Netflix has just been channeling in this 480 to 550 area, 560. It's just been bouncing in and out. So it's starting to curl a little bit on the daily. So if it does manage to get over the we'd say 497, push to 500, which is a big psychological number, then you get this area right here at 513. Then you get the 519. Then you get a gap fill right here up to the 540 area. So I would think pretty much the same thing as I believe was Shaq. I think I could make a run to 520 and pull back. You get make it inverted head and shoulders. You get the left shoulder, head, and possible right shoulder, and then it could just steamroll through the for a gap fill. So definitely be watching Netflix. Baidu is the last one. Baidu's just been getting clobbered. RCT trend line is down to 150. Can it go to 150? Yeah, sure. I can do whatever it wants. Pretty much the same thing. Inverted cup and handle right here. A lot of inverted cup and handles on the weekly. So got to be aware of what's going on. But if it does manage to get over Friday's high over we'll say 188, probably push to 190, 195. Then 200 would be a big psychological number. Then you get 205. 205 is a pretty big area right here. Then you get 210. Now Baidu is one of those stocks where you could have a monster day. So if it does manage to get over this lower high right here of the 190 area, you could end up seeing a strong push to 200. So Baidu could have a really, really strong day. The only problem with Baidu is the options are kind of nasty, the spreads are kind of nasty. So that might be more of a commons play than an options play, but we'll have to see what the spreads look like on that. So that's going to do it for the watch list. Some things to watch, like I said, thesis will change day to day based on news and chart setups and gap ups and gap downs. So that's why you need to be in the room and keep an eye on the Trade Ideas channel for potential plays and throughout the day. And so that's going to do it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Please like the video, and hope to see you in your room. Thank you.